So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Kind of get at least an extra minute, maybe. Before we start, Jason, we'll lead our. Oh, okay, yeah, that's great.
Lord, we love you so much. We're so thankful for the time that you've given us to set aside to come and discuss your word. Tonight, as we focus on the minor prophets and specifically Obadiah, help us to see the things that you would have us to learn and to understand from the instruction of Edom. God, help us to trust you more and more every single day. Help us to get closer to you. May we always do things that are right in your sight. In Jesus we pray. Amen.
Just let you know up front, I've thought I've had several things the last few days. So we went to urgent care today, and they swabbed me for 3 different things: COVID, the flu, and strep. And I was wanting to test positive on one of those. It wasn't COVID or the flu. Only strep because I wanted to get some kind of relief. When she said I was negative on all 3, I was kind of bummed. But then she said, but we're going to take care of you. And so I have bronchitis, which I'm not contagious, evidently, because the other 3 I think would have been. So I have bronchitis, so my voice is not projecting at all. Actually, I think I scared the pharmacist a while ago, and I said I'm kind of in a hurry because I need to teach a Bible class. And so she goes, you have to pick your battles. You know what that is. We're in a hurry to have our drugs. So I'm going to need your all's help, especially tonight on the reading, which you graciously helped me with. Anyway, but tonight even more. I'm not going to be able to maybe explain as much as maybe in the past, just because my head is fuzzy. So anyway, we're in Obadiah again tonight. And we're going to start off with the 2 dates that they think that Obadiah might have been written. There's an early date and a late date. And Obadiah 10:11 says, because of the violence against your brother Jacob, we talked about Jacob and Esau on Sunday, you will be covered with shame, you will be destroyed forever. On the day you stood aloof while strangers carried off his wealth and foreigners entered his gates, he cast lies for Jerusalem, you were like one of them. We're talking about Eden in this case. So, anybody want to read this particular slide?
A major factor in determining when Obadiah's prophecies against Edom were fulfilled rests on when the book was written. The prophet mentions a recent invasion of Jerusalem in chapter 1, 10, and 11, which helps to narrow down the date of writing.
Which was these 2 verses right here.
Jerusalem experienced 4 different invasions in Old Testament times, and only 2 fit the time period under discussion in Obadiah. The early date would be about 845 BC, when the Philistines and Arabians attacked Jerusalem during the reign of King Jehoram, 2 Chronicles 21, 16 through 17. The later date would be approximately 586 BC, following the invasion of Babylon, 2 Kings 24 and 25.
Now, why are we not for sure when Obadiah was written? These are 2 dates, and we're talking about almost under 300 years apart, so this is a big, wide span. So why don't we know specifically why or when Obadiah was written? You may remember.
There's no clear demarcation on what kind of event or king or anything else like chronologically.
Right. And what else wasn't mentioned in Obadiah? There were no mention of kings. No kings were mentioned. So, let's, if the earlier date is correct, Obadiah would be the earliest of the prophetic books in the Old Testament. Those who hold this position refer to 2 Kings 8:10, which mentions Edom, I like that on me, I say Eden all Sunday, Edom setting up its own, his days, Edom revolted from the rule of Judah and set up a king of their own. So they did have kings in Edom. You might want to read this slide.
The strongest argument, this is, I guess, Homer Haley.
It is.
writing about the early date. The strongest argument for the early date, however, seems to rest on the text of Obadiah itself. Obadiah speaks of foreigners entering Jerusalem's gates, of Jacob's substance being carried away, of lots being cast upon the city, and of destruction and disaster. But his language is not inclusive enough to describe the destruction by the Babylonians. The destruction of the temple and the royal palace, the carrying away to Babylon of the king and the people and the remnant that went into Egypt are not mentioned. Further, the language of the prophet implies that the people were residing in the city at the time.
Roger's correct. This is Homer Haley, and I guess you guys have heard of Homer Haley, right? I guess he's written a lot of different books that people use, commentaries that people use. He wrote a whole commentary on the Minor Prophets. I think he's preached, I did a little research, he's preached in numerous places. So he has a lot of respect when it comes to this type of book right here. So what two dates are used for the writing of Obadiah? It would be A, B, C, or D. So
It's
you
not-
want to,
there's
on
no
your
comment.
jot, just write down a letter that you think might be correct.
Well, there's no,
Oh, I'm sorry.
well, there's no AD or CE.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's,
So side note, when it comes to all these different abbreviations. Instead of AD and DC, most modern reference materials use what?
Common era and
So I'm sure Jason, Jonathan, when I was a teacher in science, we never really see BC or AD anymore in any of the reference books. It's always CE and BCE. Get away from any biblical notations.
which is the reason in papers I never do CE or BC. And for some publications, I mean, they may require that, but I don't use it because it is really a very clear modernistic secular approach to
It
data.
is. It is. You're exactly right. But if you're reading, researching things, you see
Yeah.
these particular abbreviations, you'll know what they mean now.
So common error.
The common era,
So
the
when
CE,
So the common error starts with,
it's after,
It's pretty much the same.
it's
thing.
the same. They just don't use biblical notations. Like we know that AD stands for,
after the death.
day of the Lord, and BC, of course, means before Christ. They don't want to have to use anything dealing with Christian language. And so it's just another thing to take out of our society as far as anything biblical. So Sirah is Latin for around or about. It is often used to show when something approximately happened. And so you'll see this when you're researching as well. And these are the notations for that. So let's go back to this question. Which two dates best represent what we just talked about?
The two,
Which one?
the two BC dates.
Oh, what happened, Jonathan? I don't know. What happened there?
I love that. Always John.
He's cursing my place.
I had nothing whatsoever with these problems.
All right. Well, it should have been. Yeah. A and B. All right. I'm in a brain fog right now. All right. So again, this kind of shows you some pictures. Here's Edom right here, and Judah's right here. Of course, Jerusalem's on up a little bit, so you get the reference of where we're talking about. These are some pictures that I believe that pretty sure at East Side and Bowling Green Kerr. Gary Kerr. You might know Gary Kerr. I think he's been to the Bible Land many times, and I think these are some of his slides. But not a very hospitable looking place. This is probably, this is the mountains of Edom. And this is, I guess, Petra again, another picture of Petra. I like this. It kind of illustrates where we're talking. We're talking here, but I'm sure, Brother John, you're probably familiar with the King's Highway as far as
Yeah,
how that was a trade route.
yeah, and then that, of course, there's a lot of interesting views as to where the children were crossed, but I and many others believe they crossed at the Gulf of Aqaba or further south, and believe that the Mount Sinai is actually in Saudi Arabia, which is just down to the south. But so they would have passed through Edom, obviously on their way to Moab, right across from where Mount Nebo is and those types of things. So they would have passed this way. I don't know if they would have passed directly through that way, but somewhere in that area they would.
Well, is this a reason that Edom actually was sort of wealthy because they were able to trade with all the different, I guess, nations that would travel through this particular route? Weren't they pretty wealthy in terms of having things?
Yeah, so so we remember the name Kadesh Barnea, where the revolt happened with. So there are some people believe that Kadesh Barnea was actually in Edom. There's debate about that, but yeah, they're in a good position. But the major highway through Israel was along the Mediterranean Sea,
Right.
the Via Mara. So this would have been a pretty treacherous route that that wouldn't have been the best way to travel for sure. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how wealthy they were. I mean, they were a very small country, but they were also a vassal of Egypt too.
That's true. So, Obadiah, verse by verse. So if you guys want to take out your Bibles and turn to Obadiah, only one chapter. And so we're going to kind of go through some of the verses and have some comments on some of the text in these verses. Which should help me fill in these blanks, if you would. I think this would be based on Obadiah 1 through 4, verses 1 through 4. Edom would be something, despite her presence, something in security. Okay, fill in those blanks. Let's see if you can fill in the blanks and then we're going to read it.
Destroyed.
Defeated, destroyed. Yep. And based on their present, such with the S. Strength. Strength and security. So here, turn to the verses here to read.
Obadiah 1:1. The vision of Obadiah, thus says the Lord God concerning Edom. We have heard a report from the Lord, and the messenger has been sent among the nations. Rise up, let us rise against the battle.
Verse 1 talks about a vision, a dream, revelation. These are all references to the Word. Other scripture places where these particular terms are used. 1 Chronicles 17:15, Nathan reported to David all the words of his entire revelation. Isaiah 1:1, the vision concerning Judah and Jerusalem that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Zedekiah, kings of Judah. And finally, Daniel 8:1. Just showing you different verses where these terms are used.
Behold, I will make you small among the nations. You shall be utterly despised.
You want to go ahead and read that?
Oh, Jeremiah 49:7 and 15. Concerning Edom, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Now I will make you small among the nations, despised by mankind.
So you see here that not only Obadiah, but there were several other prophets who prophesied about Edom. and used the same terminology, so it's almost like who copied who? Was it Obadiah copying Jeremiah, or Jeremiah copying Obadiah? Now, if we go with the 845 date, who would be copying who?
Well, this is 300 years from Jeremiah.
So it would be Obadiah,
Yes.
Jeremiah copying.
Right, Obadiah in that date would be a contemporary of Elijah.
Exactly, exactly. Verse 2, Genesis 25:24, we talked about this on Sunday. Just as Esau despised his birthright, so did Edom would be greatly despised among men, so this is coming to pass.
The pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rock, in your lofty dwelling, who say in your heart, who will bring you down to the ground? Though you soar aloft like an eagle, though your nest is set among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord.
So what are stars mentioned in verse 4, do you think?
Stars were a common metaphor for the judgment of God. And so when people in antiquity looked up at the stars and the heavens, the moon, that represented really the interaction and the workings of the gods, ultimately. So the movement of the stars and the moon, those types of things were definitely a sign of judgment from the power and those things.
And what did the Edomites think they were? They were probably indestructible because they lived where? Very high up, kind of like they were in the stars, right? In a sense. So among the stars, a very high place, a high defensible place. Babylon used similar arrogance in Isaiah 14:13-15. Here, you want to read that? Yeah.
The terror you inspire and the pride of your heart have deceived you. You who live in the clefts of the rocks, who occupy the heights of the hill, though you build your nest as high as the eagles, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord.
So but this looks like similar language as before with Jeremiah, maybe borrowing similar language from Obadiah in this case. Pride of your heart, but the rocks bring you down, declares the Lord. An eagle builds its nest so high that no other creature can reach it. An eagle is also called a bird of what? Prey. Symbolizing how Edom has treated the nations around them. And in the New Testament, eagle is used 26 times. So what is it that has deceived the Edomites according to Obadiah 1:3? What has deceived the Edomites?
Their pride.
Their pride. This is if there's going to be two takeaways for Obadiah, this is one of the two takeaways. The pride of their heart has deceived you. Again, you who dwell in cliffs of the rock, whose inhabitants is high, you who say in your heart, who will bring me down to the ground? They were so arrogant, they were so high up, nobody could touch them. And a lot of nations tried, and a lot of nations couldn't touch them. But they were pretty arrogant about this. But God can take care of any nation, of course. Though you make your home high like an eagle, though you set your nest above the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord. And did he bring them down? Did he? Yeah. There's a lot of nations that still exist today that were judged by God, that God did not say he was going to totally destroy, but he was going to place judgment on them, and there were certain consequences. But with Edom, he said he was going to do what?
Wipe them out.
Wipe them out. And are they anymore? They're wiped out.
It's a tourist site.
It's a tourist site, exactly. It is. Oh, look at that.
Nobody dwells there at all, John? There's nobody there lives there?
It's a tourist destination. It's just like Jericho. So Jericho was flattened to the ground, still is a pile of rubble, but of course the city was rebuilt around it. Yeah, I mean, and there's probably villages and Bedouins in that area. But yeah, I think that the prophecies were fulfilled. Same with Tyre. Tyre is a wonderful example of how these prophecies sometimes took place over the course of years, if not hundreds of years, to take place.
Well, That makes sense with them. Edom thought they were indestructible because they'd been established for hundreds of years, and they thought that they were going to be, not defeated ever. But again, God took care of that. So Edom to be thoroughly what? This is verses 5 through 7. Can you help fill in that blank? Right. Right. Very good.
If thieves came to you, if plunderers came by night, how you have been destroyed, did they not steal only enough for themselves? If great gatherers came to you, did they not leave gleanings? How Esau has been raided, his treasures sought out. All your allies have driven you to your border. Those accused with you have deceived you, they have prevailed against you. Those who eat your bread have set a trap beneath you, you have no understanding.
So what do these verses mean to you? Actually, verse 5, I guess.
Well, it seemed to me that two examples were given that normally raiders would not inflict total destruction. There would be something left. But that was not going to be the case with Edom, which is again the evidence that their destruction was not going to leave a remnant like Israel and Judah was told.
So when thieves come in, they are in a hurry, right? And so they're going to gather what they can in a short amount of time, but they're not going to take everything, right?
They usually come at night.
They do. They come at night because they don't want to be seen, right? But you think God's going to be scared about coming during the day? Or anybody want to read that?
Rhetorical questions underscore the difference between what man might do and what God will do. A thief or a grape gatherer would leave something behind, but God's judgment upon the wicked will be complete. Nothing will remain.
And again, there's some more scripture for that. So Roger, right on target with that particular statement. Oh, how you ruined, destroyed, wiped out, came to an end. And there's another verse, Ezekiel 35:15, it mentions this. So want to jump in?
Edom is doomed because they broke the law of brotherly compassion by joining in wicked merriment with God's enemies as they destroyed Judah. The relationship between your brother in verse 10 and the invading strangers and foreigners here is powerful. The taking advantage of a brother's suffering show that Edom's true loyalty was toward getting ahead in the world in disregard of moral and spiritual principles.
I'm sorry. What?
Because, Obadiah 10, because of the violence against your brother Jacob, he will be covered with shame, he will be destroyed forever. Seeds of Edom's moral character were sown by their ancestor Esau, who showed that he cared more for earthly enjoyment than for God's kingdom by despising his birthright of covenant blessings and marrying Hittite wives. Translated New Testament terms, Edom symbolizes the spirit of the world. 1 John 2:15-17, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever.
Sounds familiar. Kyle, how do you want to comment on what this is trying to tell us?
Never heard that verse before in my life. But, you mentioned earlier, sorry, this isn't specifically on that verse, but you mentioned earlier that the grape gatherers and the raiders, when they come in, we're all familiar with the concept. Something really bad has happened to somebody, and you're like, you must have done something wrong. Like, you must have had that coming, in some form or fashion. There's going to be no mistake when God gets done with Edom that they've done something wrong, and what has happened was, at the very least, by something greater than them. And that flies in the face of who they are, which was all about promoting self. So there's a phrase that just every time I read the Minor Prophets, it echoes in the back of my head. Be humble, become humbled, or be humble. And ultimately, God gives mankind that option repeatedly. You can either live a humble life or I can humble you. And you see that happening here. Their desires to promote themselves and to make their name great, setting themselves up on high, boasting about their impregnability, demeaning the world around them whenever it needs help, not being there to help the needy. Everything is focused on just, this is what I want. This is what I'm lusting after. And God's going to answer that.
And Robbie, I think too, just to add to that, the God seems to be wanting to emphasize, I mean, Edom's nothing. I mean, but God's wanting to emphasize to his people that God's righteous, and that when anyone suffers injuries to his covenant people, there's going to be consequences. So these people aren't God's covenant people, but his covenant is with Israel, or Judah in this case. And he, as part of a faithful covenant partner, he's going to administer justice for the injustice that was against Judah. Because if I'm not mistaken, this was inflicted upon Jerusalem. These events took place in and around Jerusalem. I think the text indicates that. So this
because it talks about gloating, it talks about boasting.
And also, almost as if when the Judahites were running from their enemies, they were hiding and either raiding them or robbing them or doing things to them as they ran away, which is the utmost form of cowardice and cruelty.
And we know Edom were descendants of Esau, who was the brother to Jacob. So we're talking about, in a sense, Israel was God's chosen nation, but still the Edomites had they were related to Israelites in a sense that Esau and Jacob were the head of those two particular nations, and you would think that being brothers, in a sense, that they would take care of each other. But again, it goes back to the pride of their heart. When Kyle said about they were all about themselves, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. It was all about themselves, and they didn't show kindness to their, in a sense, their brother. Oh, you see that? Cut off or ever. Say what?
Will I not on that day, declares the Lord, destroy the wise sages out of Edom and understanding out of Mount Esau.
Mm-hmm.
And your mighty men shall be dismayed, O 10 men, so that every man from Mount Esau will be cut off by slaughter. Because of the violence done to your brother Jacob, shame shall cover you, and you shall be cut off forever.
Very good. Anybody know what wise sages?
The wise men, the people of prominence,
Mm-hmm.
those who possess the so-called wisdom.
Right. So wise sages. Yeah, I apologize for my mind is very cloudy tonight, and so I'm trying to string sentences and try to pronounce words. So just bear with me. Wise sages, Egypt, Babylon, Edom relied upon learned sages who claimed to interpret divinations. However, God will destroy the wise wisdom of the wicked.
Therefore,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was saying the Egyptians had these types of prophets and sages and people that performed divination and supposed miraculous tricks and those types of things. I'm sure Edom had them too.
Babylon as well.
Yeah, sure.
Are mentioned as having astrologers, and I think would be very similar.
Right. Well, this goes back to what Rodney was saying, someone respected for the possession of wisdom, judgment, experience. Matthew 11:25, we do have a New Testament. Jesus, about this time, Jesus claimed, heartily praise thee, Father, Lord of heaven and of earth, that thou hast hid these things from sages and men of discernment, and hast unveiled them to babes. So who are supposedly our wise sages today, 2023?
Congress.
What's that? Congress? I've got a list, Thomas, and that's on the list.
Social media.
Yes?
Televangelists.
Yep.
End time predictors.
In time. Would that be climatologists? That they predict the end of time if we don't get rid of fossil fuels? In, is it 12 years? You don't see it, was it 12 years? Anybody else? Thomas? Number one, politicians. News host. Scientists. Hollywood. Right? A lot of people pay attention to Hollywood in the secular world. Athletes. U.S. Department of Education. Why would I put that up there?
Because that was your boss for
That was. Especially in the public school system, they're trying to, indoctrinate our children with certain, I would call doctrine.
race theory is
Yes.
infiltrating through.
So there's all kinds of different things coming down the pike in the public school system. Silicon Valley. I guess that would be the social media, Facebook, Google, all those. Colleges and universities, which is kind of sad because our universities used to be, you go in and they would project ideas and it would be back and forth and share ideas and just you would learn different points of view. You had your own point of view and you could, have wisdom, I guess you could say. But today our universities are what?
The beacons of humanism and secularism and godlessness.
I was in a biology class at UK many moons ago. Randy, it was maybe 1987, something like that. You were born in? Okay, you're fine. So I was in this UK biology class. I transferred from Bellarmine University. It was college at the time. I wish I'd stayed there. Because I wanted to be a forest ranger. And Bellarmine didn't have forestry as a degree. So I went to the UK, and I was in this biology class, probably 200 people in this biology class. And the professor on day one, minute one, asked, who believes in God? I didn't raise my hand. To this day, I am so disappointed in myself. Yeah, I didn't raise my hand. I think maybe 2 or 3. 200 people, 2 or 3 might have raised their hands. And I wasn't one of them. Then he proceeded to say, God is dead. And of course, it was biology class, so you can imagine what they were teaching. Evolution. And that was a long time ago.
Day one?
Day one, first minute.
And that's a long time ago, Rob. That's
It
not
was.
today.
I was in UK in the early 60s, archaeology. Trust me, it's the same thing back then.
Really? Same kind of, so.
You're very unenlightened if you believe God. I mean, you're not an enlightened intellectual. And that's the complete object of these professors is, number one, to remain in their positions. And it's become such now that if you believe in creation, or if you believe in the inspiration of Scripture, you will literally lose your job if you espouse those views.
You're right. And it's not, you can't put that genie back in the box. So for you guys who have young children and you're going to go off to college, just be very aware of what college you're sending your children to. And prayer. So what are these people promoting? They're not promoting Christianity, are they? Promoting secularism, of course. So do you think they have any pride of the heart? Do you think they think, and I go back to politics, Thomas said, the Democrats and Republicans. Is there anything a Republican say that will make a Democrat happy or vice versa? So they both have pride of the heart, right? And it's kind of sad. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so we read that already. So dismayed means terrified. Timon means right hand in the Portman southern city in Edom. Timon was the name of Esau's grandson and a Edomite chief. And Timon is a synonym for the kingdom of Edom. And there's supposed to be a question there. Was there a certain Timonite that actually catered to Job as one of the three friends? I think he was a Timonite. So this is where this is located. Timon's right there, and then here's Mount Seir Range. Anybody want to read this?
Edom is doomed because they broke the law of brotherly compassion by joining in the
Oh,
wicked.
we already did this, didn't we?
That's right.
All right. Sorry about that. For some reason, when I transfer my flash drive here, things. What's another name for Mount Esau?
Seir.
It's one of these. Okay, it's Mount Seir. So why is living in the mountains not a safe bet for the Edomites? Here's your choices. Jehovah made the mountains. Jehovah weighed them in a balance. At Jehovah's presence, the mountains quake. And the mountains smelt like wax at the presence of the Lord.
True.
They're all correct. So God made the mountains. So living in the mountains isn't going to help you that much, since God created everything. Do not what? Globe. I should have you guys close your eyes and you can open one eye. Slide presented. All right, globes. What's the R? This is 12 through 14. Starts with an R. Could be. Could be rejoice. Actually, it's. Could be. It is. Inner gates, or gate of Judah. Oh. I'll just give you that. Loot. H, what is that? Hurt. Or, this was like Brother John was saying, prison survivors.
On the day that you stood aloof, on the day that strangers carried off his wealth and foreigners entered his gates and cast lots for Jerusalem, you were like one of them.
Heartless, right? That's what aloof means. It means heartless. You were heartless. You didn't have much compassion.
But do not gloat over the day of your brother in the day of his misfortune. Do not rejoice over the people of Judah in the day of their ruin. Do not boast in the day of distress. Do not enter the gates of my people in the day of their calamity. Do not gloat over his disaster in the day of his calamity. Do not loot his wealth in the day of his calamity.
Calamity 3 times. Why would Obadiah use this particular word 3 different times?
That's the judgment of God. It would be utterly complete and thorough. And they would be surprised, probably.
They would be surprised.
Do not stand at the crossroads to cut off his fugitives. Do not hand over his survivors in the day of distress.
So describe the gates of a city. Brother John, this is.
Yeah, with a chamber,
Sure, question.
typically, I mean, it depends on the era, but when gates were built with chambers, that was the, you know, kind of the method of Solomon. This is, obviously gates could be, most all gates included a chamber afterwards where there were several levels of protection. So, and this is where the interaction and this is where the court system was based, was in this gate system that was the opening of the city. But it wasn't just a single gate. After you came through the gate, there were chambers where there was interactions going on, political judgments and those types of things.
So when God was with Jerusalem, with these gates hold. When God was with
Yes.
Jerusalem, with the gates open. If God was not with Jerusalem, with the gates hold.
It certainly didn't.
When God was with his people, the gates held. But when the people were disobedient, the gates often offered no protection.
Hosea was there when Sennacherib came down from Assyria and laid siege to the city, and so he's seen when faithfulness. Hezekiah was a faithful king, and his God's enemies were defeated. But then, of course, not long after that, Babylon knocked all the gates out.
Exactly. They didn't have very good kings at that time either. So Isaiah 3:25-26, your men will fall by the sword, and your mighty ones in battle, and her gates will lament and mourn. And I'm just going to bypass that just because we're running out of time. Try to get through verse 15. Israel's victory day, something is coming. Does this mention other places?
Many other places.
Many other places. Almost every single prophet, minor and major, mentions in the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is near upon all the nations. As you have done, it shall be done to who? Your deeds shall return on your, or as you have drunk on my holy mountain, so all the nations shall drink continually. They shall drink and swallow, and shall be as through they had never been, thoroughly destroyed. So Israel will what? Retake land. Okay. Yeah. So at Mount Zion, there shall be those who escape, and it shall be holy. The house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. So Israel will rule all the nations. I'm going to bypass this slide.
And I think that that's a reference to the Davidic covenant, I'm suspecting, because that, you know, they would not forever rule all the nations. They would only do that for a very brief time. So I don't know if I'm the only one, but when you say that was a reference to the covenant with David about a reign that would last forever.
Okay. I'm trying to get these questions. Ready to go. 7 minutes to go. And I'm not seeing them. Jonathan, what did you do with my questions? Killing me, man. All right, I tell you what. You know what? Get your map out. Let's do this. Now, on our next lesson after the gospel meeting, I want to spend at least a third of the class with Obadiah, and then we'll go into Joel. Okay? So we'll finish up with Obadiah. I asked you guys, if you got my email, to submit some questions for the class, and that's going to be a good time for you to ask the class questions based on Obadiah. So let's just do this. We'll do this in the class. What would number one be? And here's your possible choices over here. One would be,
That's pretty close to Edom.
yeah, it is. That's Edom. All right, number two is right here. And on your map, go ahead and submit that on that map on the graphic organizer, so we kind of get used to going in different places. Number two
Capital City was Basra, was it not?
We're close. Yeah. Oh, the capital city?
Yeah, capital city.
So it's not Basra. So that would leave, anybody?
Mount Seir would be number 4 or 3.
So it's,
Mount Seir would be 3 or 4.
number 3 would be Basra,
Okay.
that's the
Okay.
capital city. Number
would be
4
Seir.
would be Petra.
Petra.
Number 5 should be easy. Jonathan, what's number 5?
That's the Dead Sea. That's not Galilee up there, is it? I can't see the Dead Sea.
It's right, should be right in the middle.
Okay, that's the Dead
That's
Sea.
right. It's it is.
Dead Sea.
Give me the easy one, okay? Number 6, it's not Mount Sinai.
Well, Seir has to be somewhere around there.
It's right
There we
here.
go.
All right, 7 should be a hard one because we're running out of options. There's only 2 left. Actually, 3 left.
Moab is 8.
Jerusalem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moab is 8. And number 9 is what's left?
That's, yeah.
Judah. All right, so she's adding to the map. I know my map is very small. I was trying to find one that would incorporate all the different places we're going to be talking about. It's kind of hard. You'll notice I went way west. There's a reason for that. We're going to be talking about a particular place way west. One of the minor prophets. Okay, so you have your postie. Thank you for all your help today. Hopefully, I won't be as foggy mind, words or phrase, Sunday. But even if I'm not, that's my typical. I'll just let you guys know when it comes to pronouncing words, my wife calls it a lazy tongue. For some reason, my ability to pronounce certain words or phrases is difficult for me, and I let my kids know that beforehand. And when I come across the word in my class that I'm having a hard time pronouncing, I'll do this. And that's a clue for the class to what? Help me. And if I start doing that, help me, okay? And I feel like my kids understand that if I have a disability, and I'm a teacher, which, okay, then maybe they can be successful in life as well. And so I do have a problem with that. I thought that if I practiced and just go through words and words, and I'll just give you a little clue. I have all kinds of words with how I should be able to pronounce them. And that's just something that I've had to deal with my whole life. I'm 60. I don't think I'm going to get any better. But if you guys appreciate your help with that and appreciate your understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.